Hi, hello, and welcome back to a podcast where I talk about going from corporate drone to corporate dropout. You know it, you love it. Welcome back to Chaos and Fuckery. And as promised, Saturdays are going to be my topical episodes. And we've talked a little bit about me, we've talked a little bit about Chaos and Fuckery, and now I want to get into my business a little bit more. I really want to talk about the state of the fitness industry, because when I got into the fitness industry as, someone who's actually trying to make money with it and help people, obviously helping people is my number one priority when it comes to coaching, but at the end of the day I am running a business and making money is important. I got into doing all my certifications and things like that in middle of 2021, so it was not quite COVID peak where everyone was looking for a coach or a way to work out at home because all of the gyms were shut down. Things were starting to open up again when I first got into it. Obviously, I was going to a gym. I think when I first started training myself in a more traditional way when it comes to weightlifting, when I was running my first MAPS program, I was required to wear masks to the gym still, I believe, which is wild to think about that we were ever trying to do cardio or train in general in cloth masks. That just thinking about it now sounds crazy. But when it comes to when I started, we were kind of at the height of people trying to find ways to be active and get out of their homes. And they were hiring a lot of the online coaches because that was all they had. They didn't really have trainers in the big box gyms that were training people at the time. So the big box trainers weren't getting as much business as, say, someone online who could coach you from afar, watch your form via video, give you their training, give you your nutrition, and all of that via an Excel file or an app. So that's where the fitness industry was when I started. Supplement industries existed. They've long since existed. But I don't think the influencer marketing world that has boomed with the creation of TikTok Shop had really come to be yet. TikTok was still kind of the weird dancey app that adults weren't really on. So that being said, I wasn't on TikTok and I should have been. That was a business mistake that I made. And now if TikTok does go away, which I do want to do a whole episode on kind of the fall of TikTok, because I do believe for small businesses, TikTok is slowly no longer becoming that place to be, right? I think platforms like YouTube are coming back out of the woodworks to be a place for small business owners to really utilize not only monetization like they did on TikTok, but also the visibility that something like YouTube Shorts can provide to small business creators. But that is a episode for a different day. TikTok Shop wasn't a thing yet when I started, and it wasn't as big. When I started in the business and I was looking for guidance on where should I be putting myself out there? How should I be getting clients? How should I be looking at my social media strategy? Because I'm no expert in social media and I've never claimed to be. So I obviously was seeking out guidance on how to do all of that. And every fitness person I ever talked to told me TikTok was a waste of time, which I regret listening to at this point in time. But that's where the fitness industry was. A lot of online coaches were also asking for paid in fulls. The uprising of PayPal credit was how a lot of coaches were getting paid. They were literally suggesting people take out huge lines of credit to pay them. And that is insane to me now that I think about it. And I even utilized this tactic when I was talking to potential clients. And now I'm like, why? Why did I do that? Why did you think that was a good idea? When it comes to coaching, you can do all of the research in the world, but the person you're hiring may end up not getting you anywhere, or they may make things worse, or they may be the best thing you ever hired. You have no guaranteed, especially with personal training, there is no financial recoup on that investment. There is a physical recoup, sure, if your coach is good. But there's no financial recoup on that money you just took out. Whereas at least with business mentorship, you can justify, like, I might be putting this on my credit card, if you will, but they're helping me grow my business so that I can pay myself back tenfold, right? If they're a good mentor, being the key words there. So you can justify when it comes to business coaching, in my opinion, more than you can justify when it comes to fitness coaching, because there is no financial recoup in fitness coaching. However, that doesn't make fitness coaching irrelevant. That doesn't make it a waste of money. It just means if you can't afford it, you probably shouldn't be taking out more than a mortgage to pay a trainer, right? I don't know why that was ever a marketing strategy we used in the fitness space. Yeah, let's just use use PayPal credit. Take out lines of credit to pay me. I mean, I do because it lines our pockets. We get the money at the end of the day when we encourage people to use tools like that. And I think that's insane and scammy in certain ways. The fitness industry was even there. People are already, the obesity problem has been a problem for many, many years. It was prior to COVID. There has been an issue with childhood obesity, adult obesity, just overweight people in the United States of America for a very long time. And that is nothing new. So when I think about not only are these people that are looking for our help cannot afford us, and then we're going to go try and put them in debt too? What the fuck is wrong with us? So there's that aspect, right? The coaching, there's a lot of scammers that came into the business when a lot of us were online. And sure, that is, and a lot of people even went to MLMs, which is a whole different scammy tactic. Companies like Bloom appeared on the scene in the early COVID days and boomed because of the way that they marketed on TikTok that was borderline illegal. There are so many things in the fitness space that boomed at the struggle of people through the COVID pandemic. That was about the time that I joined the space, not realizing what the space looked like at the time. That's where I came in. So now we are, 4 years from there? Maybe it wasn't 21 because I feel like I've only been doing this for 3 years. Maybe I don't know. My timeline's a little bit off. I thought it was 21, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was 22. Either way, we are looking at this world now, 4 years later, where we have RFK Jr. as the Department of Health and Human Services head, who has been known to be a vax denier, but that's not really as big of an issue. I mean, it's an issue, but when it comes to the fitness space, it's not really an issue, right? It doesn't impact me as a fitness coach if he runs around and tells people a bunch of false things about vaccines. As a fitness coach, as a human, that's a different story entirely. But what does impact me as a fitness coach, because I've seen the impact some of these medications have had with my clients, is his nonstop attack on things like SSRIs and stimulants, and I'm assuming in the future the hammer for GLP-1s, which, spoiler alert, aren't actually prescription drugs. You need a prescription to get a peptide for a GLP-1, sure, but it is a did I say that right? You need a prescription to get a peptide is what I was trying to say. But GLP-1s are that. They're a peptide. They're not addictive in any quality, so I don't know. Okay, we can go into that too. But he is screaming about things that don't matter to the obesity epidemic, right? We're talking about seed oils. We're talking about food dyes. We're talking about artificial sweeteners. You can pry my artificial sweeteners from my cold, dead hands. They actually help me with some of my sweet tooth if I do have one. I very rarely have a sweet tooth, but artificial sweeteners have been game changers in curbing that so that I don't go after something like a king-size Reese's Easter Bunny. Because there are a few times of the year that I absolutely have a sweet tooth. Reese's Easter Bunny and Reese's Santas are those two things. I will forever, if I see one, pick them up kind of situation. And I could easily, one of the only candies I loved as a kid and still love as an adult, I could easily slam a whole Easter Bunny and not even think twice about it. That is a me thing. RFK Jr. is coming into the stands and will impact the fitness space with some of his policies if he continues down the pipeline he had prior to being named Department of Health and Human Services. Now, there are some things that he said about obesity that might actually help me as a small business owner. Some things, right? If we put more effort on proactive care, personal training, nutrition education, nutrition coaches, dietitians, all of those people that actually help with navigating the really complex thing that is fueling your body appropriately for you, because it is highly individualized. If we put more insurance, if insurances are allowed to cover those things rather than having to go through the hassle of getting reimbursed through an HSA or having to pay out of pocket for us, then it does help me as a small business owner because I can help more people without it being directly out of their pockets in times where any extra money coming out of people's pockets can be difficult. So if something like that were to happen, great, awesome. But they're also trying to move student loans to the Small Business Association, and I'm worried how that could impact small business loans. If your entire portfolio is now student loans, are you going to be giving any more money to small businesses trying to start and participate? Not saying that will be happening, but that is a weird side tangent I could foresee happening for small businesses that are maybe, trying to start a brick and mortar gym rather than an online space gym. And brick and mortars, can a small brick and mortar gym really compete with a big box gym like Planet Fitness or LA Fitness? The reality is no. People know those names. People want the gyms that they can go to all over the country if they have to travel for work. And they like the convenience of things like 24-hour access and low subscription fees, if you will, for the gym. So I don't foresee a lot of small gyms, even the one and only bodybuilding, powerlifting gym in my town closed. That's how not lucrative a brick and mortar gym is as a small business owner. So we're looking at the space now. We've got RFK Jr. who's trying to change the nutrition space. And I'm not saying we don't need change, because we absolutely do. But focusing on things like seed oils, artificial sweeteners, and dyes is not going to change the nutrition space. It's just not. And taking away things that help people deal with their food noise and help people deal with their forgetting to eat, if you will, because sometimes that is a case with stimulants, or even deal with their hunger, because stimulants do have an appetite suppressant. So taking away stimulants and GLP-1s is not really an answer to solving the problem either. It will only make the problem worse. GLP-1s at their core are a tool. It is no different than sleeve surgery. I mean, it's different at the core implementation, obviously, but when it comes to what you have to do to be successful with these things, it is no different. A GLP-1 and a stimulant basically function in a similar method, in the sense that it helps with food noise, it helps with appetite suppressant, it helps with, in the case of insulin resistance and GLP-1s, this is something a stimulant can't do, but with GLP-1s and insulin resistance, it can help with that as well, without having to drastically change the diet to the form of like no carbs and keto. So they're tools though. They are not a magic drug, a magic prescription like everyone wants to think they are, which is why I find, again, the supplement industry reading us all for filth, coming in with nature's Ozempic, because that's just not reality. There is no magic supplement that is going to solve the problem for you. GLP-1s help with the mental side and the physical side due to the way that they are structured, but also in order to eventually get off said GLP-1 and live life normally, you're going to have to make that lifestyle change, or else you'll be forever on a maintenance dose, and I don't believe that is the way to go about using a GLP-1. Now, I'm not a medical professional by any stretch of the imagination. There are some medical professionals that do recommend that GLP-1s are a lifelong drug similar to that of a diabetic on insulin. And I think this is personal opinion, not medical advice in any way, shape, or form, obviously. But from a personal training, nutrition aspect, that is just enabling people to never change their lifestyle. That is enabling people to utilize the benefits of something like a GLP-1 and not actually recognize where they went wrong to get to the point that they needed to be on a GLP-1. GLP-1s are life-saving for people, and I'm not going to say they're not. But we also have to take a little bit of personal accountability and, go and train. Because the other thing with GLP-1s is, yes, you may see a lot of weight loss, but that also tends to be a lot of muscle loss if you're not pairing it with a focus on protein and a focus on resistance training, while be it low intensity resistance training due to your low calorie consumption being on a GLP-1. Pairing those two things with the GLP-1 will help you maintain the muscle you have rather than lose more muscle than you are body fat. Because there is a potential, even on a GLP-1, that you end up becoming what some people call skinny fat, where you end up having more body fat percentage-wise than you did when you started on the GLP-1, because of the fact that a majority of what you lost in poundage was actually muscle mass, and that's not good for anything. That actually pares down your metabolism, and then you have to go through the effort of reverse dieting and bringing that back up to be able to really eat anything more than 600 calories a day. It's a huge, complicated process, which is why, similar to sleeve surgeries, same opinion belongs belongs to bariatric surgery as well, we should be pairing those things with personal training and nutrition guidance, whether it be from a nutrition coach just because you need accountability, or a dietitian or a nutritionist because you need more like a detailed diet plan. Those two things need to be paired with anyone on a GLP-1 and anyone on who has gone down the path of surgery. They need to be not priorities, but in my opinion, personal training and some form of nutrition guidance need to be immediately tied to those two things as a requirement. That is not an option. You will do it, or we don't give you these things. And some bariatric programs do actually require that. Not only do they give you the options and resources available to utilize it yourself on the end, they do require it both going into the surgery and after. And I respect those programs because they have actually proven that the person that they're giving surgery to has attempted to do the work and will continue to be successful afterwards. Because the reality is while some people are extremely successful for bariatric surgeries and it did change their lives, there's also the other end of the spectrum where people were literally set up for failure because no one taught them anything they needed to do educationally when it comes to nutrition and training post their surgery, to the point that they went through the surgery and then gained it all back and then some. So the failure rate on bariatric surgery is higher than it should be, due to the fact that we aren't, incorporating all methods of health and fitness when making these giant decisions. Because I am not anti these tools as a trainer, because they are tools. You can go through these things and they are not easy decisions to decide to be on, because a lot of people who go through these things, whether it be surgery or GLP-1s, feel like a failure because they're needing to utilize these tools. And if you have that type of mentality about using these tools, that is, in my opinion, the right mentality. Not that you're a failure, but wishing that you weren't at the point that you needed it, and recognizing that it is simply just a tool. You have to continue to live your lifestyle as a new lifestyle is the important mental shift that is needed when utilizing these tools. So the industry right now is not focused on those types of things. The industry right now is focused on selling you the next big thing, the next big solution. And that's where the Ozempic and Nature's Ozempic and the obsession with GLP-1s has come from, is everyone wants a quick fix. And surgery was too complicated to be a quick fix. So now we have the peptides, which are not new things. They've been used for a long time for one reason or another, but now they're Ozempic face and what celebrities are on it, and everyone's obsessed with it to the point that everyone's forgetting the basics of health and fitness. 80-20, right? 80% were dialed in and doing the whole foods thing and the water and the, training 2 to 3 days a week, because it doesn't have to be an everyday thing. Which is the other reason people get themselves into trouble, is they assume I have to go every day. And realistically, you don't. To be able to see progress and be able to maintain progress if you've already lost the weight you want to lose, 2 to 3 days a week is plenty. And unless for a significant amount of time, right? 30 minutes to an hour, 2 to 3 days a week, versus if you really want to do an everyday thing, you could do like a 15-minute session every day with bands or with body weight at home, and then it's an everyday thing. Then you can also talk about splits, which is a whole different training regime altogether. But generally speaking, for the average population, 2 to 3 days a week is fine. And that's where I struggle with the industry, is right now there is so many loud voices screaming so many wrong things. We're screaming at people about seed oils and food dyes, but we're not, and that fruit has too much sugar in it, but we're not even trying to talk to them on a normal human level about the basics, right? There's skinny talk going on right now around TikTok because we're heading into that summer body season. And while some of skinny talk is basically just how you're motivated, some of it is legitimately harmful. Again, the talking about fruits have too much sugar in them, or the never treat yourself because you're not a dog. And I don't like the mentality of treating yourself, but that doesn't mean you can't have something that would be stereotypical considered as a treat. You are allowed to have all of these different things. You just have to think, as some people in Skinny Talk have put it, about the proportion sizes and what that means to you and your goals in the long form, right? If you want a fry, you can have the fry, just maybe get the small fry instead. Or if you have the calories, then sure, if it fits your macros is one of those things, but even if it fits your macros, can go off the deep end with how far people take it. Some people have gone as far as to prove that they can get abs by eating nothing but pizza every day, and that's not good for you either. Since nutrition is what we really need to be focusing on, but instead the industry as a whole tends to float towards people who are extremists and talk about how they can never keep sugar in their house and how they would never buy these products from Costco and wander around grocery stores yelling at people for buying things that are what they would never buy. I have some form of artificial sweetener in my house at all fucking times, whether it be via energy drinks or Dr. Pepper Zero or literal sweetener to make protein treats. I don't see enough in the research that says it's all gonna kill us, we should take this off the shelves immediately. And that's the key word there, enough in the research. But even then, I am well researched on the topic and I will willingly take the risk when it comes to artificial sweeteners. And that's a me thing. If you don't want to take that risk, fine, but don't make it illegal for everybody else to do their own research and figure out, hey, this isn't that bad. I want my diet soda. Because for a lot of people, things like Coke Zero coming into the game changed the game for them when it comes to weight loss, because they could still have their daily soda, but they didn't have to drink the calories of their daily soda, or they had the ability to have a lower calorie version of their favorite drink, like a Sprite and soda or Sprite and vodka. You switch it to a Sprite Zero, and now you're really only drinking the calories of the alcohol itself. It made people's ability to exist in society while also still focusing on their weight loss so much easier. And the same is with all the protein treats, right? The protein obsession has gone a little too far off the deep end, in my opinion, because now we have things like protein sodas from Bucked Up, but it put people in a place where they were able to create lower calorie options to some of their favorite treats. We're talking about the Ninja Creamy coming on the scene, and that changed the game for me as someone who can do dairy but shouldn't, because I was able to make my own protein ice creams, and it helped people create lower calorie ice cream options for when they wanted that sweet treat, because at home they now can have a pint that is only 200 calories versus going to get the Ben & Jerry's pint at the grocery store and pounding it, which is probably like 1,000. I don't know the actual macros of a Ben & Jerry's pint, but you get the point. The fitness industry is losing the plot point very quickly, and we're heading back towards that like early 2000s era where everyone wanted to be rail thin models, and that was the view on life. Body positivity went too far, in my opinion. I do agree that everyone should love their body size at every size, but that doesn't mean not want to change. I think you can be happy with yourself and the way your body works and getting stronger and, you know, without focusing on the scale number or what you look like in the mirror. I think you absolutely can do that. But getting mad at people for wanting to get healthier who were previously body positive people is absurd. Because the reality is yes, living in bigger bodies will, in fact, likely impact you in the long run medically and cost you more in the long run medically. So you can do the work now to not have the cost later. Makes sense to me. That doesn't mean we should be shaming people in the gym for doing just that who don't look like your stereotypical gym goers. The gym is supposed to be for people to lose weight. And I get it if you are at something like a bodybuilding gym or a very private gym that is meant for people training for a very specific thing. If a newbie walks into that gym that knows nothing about the equipment there and you're frustrated because you pay out the ass for that gym to be able to train like that athlete and record or do whatever you need to do in those types of gyms where you're paying the big bucks because you're, paying for a private community, I get it. But shaming people in commercial gyms or shaming people because of what gym they go to is a ridiculous thing that I will never understand. And giving people platforms that shame people who do these things, right? I get it as a coach. If you are coaching a specific type of athlete, right, you're not going to want said athlete to go to a Planet Fitness because then you can't program them to their full capability due to the lack of barbells or whatever. Fine. But if you are just a regular weight loss coach and you're yelling at your clients because they go to a Planet Fitness, that might be the only thing in their town. That might be the only thing they can afford. If they need to be able to do their workouts from home, you as a coach, they're paying you. You adapt and figure the fuck out. You're the expert here. And I just can't stand the way the industry is attacking the people that literally we are supposed to be helping. There are so many creators I've seen that are just sharing their weight loss journey online and will get absolutely read for filth for doing things that they're supposed to be doing, like resistance training or like cardio, but they do it silly ways, like the cozy cardio girl who was walking and watching her favorite shows. I do that shit all the time. I walk and I play video games. And if that's all I can get in during that day, that's all I can get in. Like, that's just reality. Some days, 10,000 steps is all I can do. And some days, focusing on their nutrition is all some of my clients can do. And that is okay. Now, if you repeatedly make excuses and just don't want to do the work, that's different. And I will call your bullshit as a coach, just like I hope my coaches call my bullshit. But again, that is a coach and client relationship where they understand how you respond. People online make it so that people viewing their content are now afraid of gym culture and now afraid of the fitness space, and they no longer want to be a part of it, so that they continue to make their problem worse at home by some people emotionally eat. So they continue to make their problem worse by eating because they got bullied at the gym, which is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. I even have a personal story where I was doing a rest set. I was doing a 5x5 style-ish training. It wasn't a 5x5, but I had 3-minute rest sets during this time in my training. And this old man is yelling at me for just sitting on a bench on my phone that I'm not working hard enough because I had a rest set. So I wish more people just in general, this is not the fitness industry, people in general kept to themselves and minded their own goddamn business. But when it comes to being a coach and being, a representative of the fitness space, if you will, I hate it. I don't want to admit that obviously I want to sell my services, but I don't want to admit that I'm a part of this industry that is so unbelievably problematic. And people don't see the issue. One of the things that I saw recently was another coach. So there's this coach on TikTok, his name is Roy Belzer. And to me, he has more class and more love for his clients and his pinky finger than some of these V-shred, roided out idiots on the internet. And this other coach was making fun of Roy for basically clapping back to all the comments he gets about why are you a personal trainer if you're overweight. And this other dude, I don't even know who it was, to be honest, was like just going on and on about how a personal trainer should just be the bare minimum of fitness. And if there was a physique requirement to being a personal trainer, sure, but that's not the case. Anyone can take the goddamn exam. And even if that were the case, physique does not make you a good coach. Physique does not mean you can coach anybody. You could be just getting out of a bad mental health period and you gain some weight during that. Or in the case of women personal trainers, you could be postpartum and you add a little extra weight. Or in my case, you could have started your business and sharing your journey and trying to help other people along the way of actually getting your physique as well. And I have never been perfect and I will never say I'm perfect. I should be further along in my journey, but I've bounced back multiple times due to mental health issues that I needed to get in order. So yeah, there are all shapes and sizes of personal trainers purely because anyone can take the exam. But also, even if you are looking at an absolutely ripped trainer, that doesn't mean they're a good one. So I think the argument of physique makes your business card. Yes, your physique shows that you have some level of discipline, sure, but also at the same point, no one really knows how you got that physique. You could have done it doing the most damaging shit in the world. You could be, you could have got sleeve surgery and lied about it. And no one knew that that's the real reason you lost all that weight and you're your storytelling marketing tactics. So, and that's true for in-person trainers too. You can tell your story of why you became a trainer and how you got your physique, but that literally means nothing to how you coach. Because if you're just going to be the coach, even in person, that just sits there and watches the person do things with poor form, or sits there and doesn't call your client on their shit when they said they're eating their macros almost perfectly, and yet they've logged nothing and you have no idea if that's actually true, and yet they're still gaining weight, you know something's up at that point. You're calling their shit. Just like we as coaches call our clients shit, the internet should be calling these coaches shit. And I am now doing my part to call this shit out because I think it's ridiculous. On top of that, overconsumption culture with the supplements and everything else that's going on in the fitness industry right now. Everyone's like, GLP-1s and AI are going to get rid of personal trainers and nutrition coaches. No, they're not. It might change the game a little bit. Sure, we might have to adjust how we are giving training programs due to GLP-1s and the low calorie intake. AI will never have the person-to-person interaction that a trainer has, even online trainers. AI training is also usually terrible and horrible and no good, very bad day. That's like saying MLMs can replace trainers. They just can't. The industry might change a little bit in the fact that maybe instead of online through an app, we're going through VR headsets to talk to our clients. Or instead of being physically in person with a gym, in the gym with them, we can, be in a VR space and see their equipment and their form and whatnot via the headset interactions. I think that would be cool. I would love to do something like that as a coach, get into that space, but not everyone has headsets, and that would be a weird requirement unless I'm sending them to my clients. The fitness industry, Make America Healthy Again, fitness industry, they've all dove too far off the damn deep end like we have with politics nowadays. There is no such thing as agree to disagree in fitness or in Make America Healthy Again and everything else, right? The raw milk thing is probably going to end up killing people, but red dyes are not the first thing to target when it comes to an obesity problem. We need to look at, the cost of foods, because it is no secret that I can get freaking 3 cases of soda cheaper than I can get a pound of fruit. And even then, when we're talking about like bulk buying at something like Costco versus weekly trips to something like a Publix, if you will, that cost, the outer aisles is a fortune over the inner aisles. I mean, hell, even owning pets is a fortune nowadays. I looked at the price of treats for my cats yesterday. It was $8 for a box of treats that lasts like a week with my cats. Like, the cost of things does impact people's ability to eat whole foods, eat healthier. It's cheaper for me to order meal prepped foods for the week than it is to buy all of the ingredients. It is to make all of those myself. Genuinely, it is cheaper for me to order 8 meals a week from a local meal kit service than for me, myself, and I, right? As a big family, you might get into a different argument, but for me and occasionally my husband, because he sometimes orders McDonald's and sometimes he wants some of the meals that we have at home, it is genuinely cheaper to run to Costco once a month, spend $100 on produce, and then freeze some of it, and then spend $100 a week on meal prep than it is to go grocery shop and make meals every week. And it's more convenient. So sometimes you pay for convenience, but that is the reality of fitness as it is right now. The health and fitness sphere is very cost prohibitive. And I'm not talking about adding on extras or getting into a more athletic version of training where you need things like straps and supplements and you're doing 2,000 calories a day because you need to keep up with that type of meal intake to train and gain muscle for something like a bodybuilding competition or a marathon, or that type of training is a whole different level of cost that is extremely prohibitive. But fitness in its whole is a luxury right now. And I don't know that enough people realize that. And that is the focus that we need to change, because the cost of gyms is ridiculous. Paying $50 a month for a gym that doesn't even have bands, and so I'm trying to think of some other like basic things that should be in the gym. I mean, Planet Fitness is $25 a month and doesn't have full barbells. You can't, and only has like 2 Smith machines to even attempt to do something resembling barbell workout. And yes, they have plenty of dumbbells, but even then their spaces usually aren't that big. You can find some bigger Planet Fitnesses, but that's my point. The cheaper gyms don't have enough equipment and definitely don't have the facilities, right? We're talking things like saunas and red light rooms and the fun things that you get at the more expensive gyms that actually do have an impact on one's health and fitness. So you've got the cost of a gym, you've got the cost, and yes, you can work out at home. There's nothing wrong with doing at home workouts, but again, some people don't even have the space to do that. So they do need a gym. You've got the cost of eating healthy, whole foods versus processed foods. The difference is astronomical. You've got the cost of commuting or time, if you will, to be able to get to a gym. If you have kids and your gym doesn't have a daycare, because some gyms do, and I love the ones that do that, so that you can bring your kids in, go do your workout, and then go home with your kids. It's not prohibitive to parents, but also some people have crazy ass jobs where they're just exhausted by the end of the day. So time makes it extra prohibitive. And these are not excuses. This is just reality that makes everyone's health and fitness different. That there are some things that if we're going to look at government and governing the health and fitness space, one would be making personal trainers and nutrition coaches more regulated, because anyone can call themselves a coach right now. And I think that is scamming a lot of people, because a lot of people don't have the education. They're using, well, I have my physique, so you should trust me. And then they have a bunch of people buy their programs that are jank and probably not good, because I've seen some of these programs be as low as like 1,200 calories, and good Lord, why? And then that would be number one. I would want to regulate this industry a bit more than it already is, just because there are a lot of people that get scammed and a lot of misinformation. Part one. And then part two would be insurances helping those of us in the personal training and nutrition coaching space out a bit more than they do currently, focusing on the proactive aspect of health and fitness, right? I saw something about Texas requiring daily PE now, which if we went away from that in elementary school, shame on the schools, because what? I distinctly remembering having PE at least twice a week. Maybe it wasn't every day, but like in elementary school. And then at the high school level, I could do my one physical ed requirement online, which I found hilarious because you could scam the physical hours you're supposed to have pretty easily. However, I was a dancer and it didn't matter at the time. I never stepped foot in my high school gym as a PE class, but that's here nor there. So you've got that. What was I saying? Oh, helping personal trainers and nutrition coaches out. I would also love to see things like extracurricular activities like dance and gymnastics maybe be something that we can make more affordable. Obviously, competitive dance is one thing, but just regular recreational classes that aren't at like a Y, that are at a proper studio, that have proper coaches and things like that, maybe making that part of like a parent program. I don't know how that would work. I genuinely don't know how that would work. But I know a lot of kids growing up that wanted to dance and wanted to do gymnastics, but their parents just simply couldn't afford it. And those are amazing sports in general, right? Co-ed sports. It gets really expensive for parents, and that's why a lot of kids don't get into physical activities, is because people can't afford it. So there's that. And obviously there's community centers like the Y, but again, not everyone is close to a Y that they can utilize the free resources like that. So, and then we look at cost of food, right? The cost of living in general, but also when it comes to the discrepancy between the highly processed stuff and the whole foods, because we have all of the food necessary to solve the obesity problem available to us. And I don't think taking processed foods off the shelves is really the answer, because, you know, shelf stable items, especially in a state here, or a state like Florida where we have hurricanes and things like that, are kind of a necessity. And depending on how they're canned or how they're frozen or how they're like the processing process can depend widely on their health benefits at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, we still need some of that shelf stable stuff, just purely because, you know, situations happen where power goes out and we need things to be able to last longer, or prepping or bulk buying or whatever it is. Either way, that cost differential between hyper processed foods or hyper palatable foods as well, and the whole food aspect needs to be investigated if we're really going to target the obesity aspect of the American way of life right now. Another thing would be infrastructure, but this is a bigger thing that is a lot more difficult to solve, because you would have to change the structure of cities almost entirely. The US as it stands right now, at least here in Florida, I don't know about other states, but here I could easily walk to my local Publix and would to do my light grocery shopping. Obviously, if I'm like doing cat litter or whatever, that's a different story, but I would easily walk to my local grocery store. However, there's no walking path. There's not a safe method for me to ride a bike or walk or even skate when I was doing roller skating to my local Publix. It's 5 minutes down the road and I still have to drive from my home to the Publix because there's no safe method without me getting hit by vehicles to get there. So changing local infrastructure to be able to have more walk paths, bike paths, places for people to exercise their walkability is game changing. When I lived in Europe and would wander around cities, or even when I've traveled to Europe, I'm constantly on public transit and walking to and from each public transit location in Europe and Asia. True. Asia was another one as well, because of the way their countries and cities are designed. Whereas here, I know I can't do that here in Florida. There's never been a city I've lived in that has been a doable option. And even the time I've spent in places like Utah, which are a little bit more rural, also don't have that opportunity really. So walkable cities is a big thing that I think would change the game in the grand scheme of things, but infrastructure is hard to change at this point. I definitely couldn't walk to work because the cost of living where I live close to work is double where I'm at now physically. So there's that. And then we're looking at childhood obesity, right? Education for parents when it comes to nutrition, education for parents when it comes to physical activity and how important sleep and everything else that goes with mental and physical health is. But also, like I said, making physical activity more affordable and more accessible to parents with their children is important. And maybe the step in the right direction is, in fact, PE every day, like that one law that I've seen potentially is a thing in Texas. Granted, I remember days in PE where a lot of us just kind of sat around and did nothing. So it only works if you're actually doing something, and running a mile is not necessarily, it's activity, sure, but it's also miserable for some kids who just don't like running. I was not that kid. I've always hated running. At every body size I've ever been in, running sucks. It's not my thing. I do enjoy a good walk and a good scenery though, or just a good walk and doing something else. So interest for kids and everything else does impact their physical life, right? Their physical activity, what they do. I lived in a household where my parents didn't care what sport I did. I had to do something though. I could not just sit at home. And yet I was still a gamer. I did both. When I was not at the dance studio, I was at home gaming, and that was acceptable because I worked out 5 hours a night. I would have killed to know via Apple Watches what my activity burn looked like back then. But we have people like RFK Jr. who are just focusing completely on the wrong things and are changing the fitness industry because of that, because there are a lot of influencers that scream about these seed oils and red dyes and everything else as well. And now we've got kind of the crunchy almond mom, if you will. And again, I think there's a difference between teaching your kids a healthy lifestyle and being crunchy, right? If you never let your kids have anything fun, then that's just going to make them want to go off the deep end and try it all later, in my opinion, if you're that strict, right? My stepdad has a huge sweet tooth and he loves sweets. And I make jokes when I go back to my mom's house now that there is more sweets in the house now that she doesn't have kids than there were when I was a kid growing up, because my mom was not a sweets person. She was the 100-calorie pack crunchy mom. And that's great, except for the fact that she was crunchy until we were eating out all the time. So there was a little bit of a balance there, right? We didn't have sweets in the house, but we sure as hell ate out like no other. But that's not the point. Point being is never letting your kids try things like birthday cake or cookies, or I have strong memories of making gingerbread houses and cinnamon rolls and all of those sweet treats that would be anti the crunchy life way when I was growing up. Not letting your kids have those experiences I think is a little extreme, but I also don't disagree with parents that are like, I'm not gonna let them have sugar and candy until they're school age. Okay, I get it. I'm not anti that, but never letting them have it is different. And I'm not a parent, so I obviously don't understand. I do understand that some kids have adverse reactions to some of these things, and that's fine. You've learned that about your kid. but that is not the norm, if you will, to be able to justify getting rid of them all. And it's also not the root of the problem. It is potentially a problem, but not the root. So when it comes to the fitness industry, I am struggling because I love being a coach and I love helping people and I love, showing the good sides of health and fitness, but the bads are screaming so loud right now that building a business based on the good things is really hard because those aren't the things that get highlighted. Everyone's highlighting the crazy people that want to scream about artificial sweeteners and red dyes and seed oils and how, video games make you fat and whatever it is. They want to scream about all these things, and we're not looking at the root problem, and we're not solving the root problem. And the problem will only continue to get worse if we don't solve the root. Right? We as human individuals are the root. We have to look at the root of why is eating disorder rates escalating? Why did they fall? Why? We have to look at the data and look at it realistically of, hey, what is the root problem we need to solve here? Because all these other random shiny things are not going to solve the problem long term. And realistically, they're not going to magically solve the problem across the whole, because at the end of the day, while I would love to say everyone who's overweight wants to try and better themselves and they're just struggling because of X, Y, and Z reasons, at the end of the day, there's also a lot of just obscenely lazy, rude, and obnoxious people in America. And every country, but I can speak for, Americans, if you will, as an American. Some people just don't want to change, and you can't force them to change. There will always be obese people here in the States because they have no interest in being anything else. They do not want to be anything else. And it doesn't harm me in any way, shape, or form if that is their thing. And I don't care if that's their thing, realistically speaking, but if we're going to talk about, let's solve the obesity problem in America, well, the reality is a large chunk of people will not want to change, do not want to change, have no interest in changing, and sometimes it takes a doctor telling them that they're going to die in 10 days if they don't change for them to wake up and change. You forcing every little thing down their throat is not going to change it. You screaming at them that they're fat fucks is not going to change it. While I do think we should tackle the childhood obesity issue and educate parents appropriately, when it comes to adults, they're adults. You are not going to change who they are if they don't want to change. And that is true for basically anyone who goes through a weight loss transformation. They didn't get successful until they made it about them and changing themselves and changing the lifestyle and changing who they wanted to be for whatever reason. Sometimes it's their kids that motivate them. Sometimes it's a health scare that motivates them. Whatever that initial motivation is what will solve the obesity problem in America. It's not governing people. Yes, there are ways to make access to all of these things easier, but at the end of the day, the people who are overweight need to have a reason to change, and simply shaming them in most cases is not going to work. For some people it does, but for a large majority of people who have been shamed their entire life and weren't, body positive when they were younger, body positivity had allowed them feel comfortable with who they are, sure, but also allows them to continue to never want to change or fear change due to retribution of being body positive and people screaming that they're no longer body positive. So at the end of the day, every individual adult who is overweight in America is going to have to make the decision to change for themselves. No amount of governing is going to change that. Access can change, and ease of doing some of the things that they want to do can change, but that's it. The fitness industry will continue to lose the plot point until they recognize that, until they recognize that we are here as tools and help. We are not here to shame and abuse. And I think too many voices in the space right now are loud on the shame and abuse and not loud enough on the understanding but tough love. Because we've all been in tight situations. We've all been in situations where we regret being in that situation. And people constantly harping on it and berating us, while it might help some people, generally doesn't help people. So until the fitness industry realizes that constantly calling people fat fucks and wondering how they got to that point rather than trying to understand them and their issues, we're not solving anything. And banning everything is not going to solve anything either, because black markets exist. So that's my thoughts on the fitness industry as a personal trainer and business coach trying to build my small business right now. The industry is a hard place to be in, and I don't love it, but I also want to change it from the inside rather than watch it set fire to itself from the outside. I want to be a part of it. I want to, be a positive light in the space rather than someone who screams that everyone's fat fucks and needs to just get on a treadmill. I don't coach that way. While I might be the type of person that responds to being coached that way, I won't be that, because I understand that so many people have been shamed to the point that they don't think they can ever be a part of this space and are terrified of places like the gym and of trainers like myself. And I refuse to be yet another voice that just screams at people to get a fucking grip. That's not me. That's not the way I coach. And if building my business is slower because I refuse to scream at people, then it's slower. But that's a little bit of my chaos and a lot of fuckery, because we have to talk about real fucking shit. So I appreciate you all for listening to this very long episode. Saturday episodes are probably just going to be longer because I will get heated about some of these topics, and this is one of them. I love what fitness and health can do for people, and the transformations and the mental gains people get from getting healthy and getting stronger and feeling good in their body again, or feeling like they can, live for their kids. I love all of that. But I don't love these, for lack of a better way of putting it, roided up fuckwads that are loud on the internet screaming about how people need to just not be fat. They don't try to understand, and I get it. People relate to that, but that doesn't solve the problems, and that's not going to help the people who currently are already afraid of this industry. So that being said, I appreciate you for being here. If you enjoyed this topic or want to talk more about the health and fitness industry, feel free to leave a like and maybe subscribe. But for now, I appreciate you listening to the chaos and dealing with my fuckery.